And if we don't make them, and it's like, here's what I was told in the call with Bond Counsel, with Moody's out of Chicago. You can make the call. We're going to be on a conference call. You can make the call, and you can eloquently, however you want, state your case about your city and what you're going to do as mayor to cut this $1.5 million. Or you can just not even make that call. That's an option too, and let the rating go down, because it's probably going to go down. But if you don't make that call, it's probably going to go down not 1 notch, but 2 or maybe 3. Now those are the kind of choices you have, which are not, if you call that a choice, I mean, you know, that's not much of a choice. So I made the call, or we made the call, to try to stop the hemorrhaging, the bleeding, to try to buy us some time for 6 more months, 7 months to get, you know, the $1.5 million under control. Because remember, we finished last year with $1.5 million deficit. That's still sitting there. When you add up all this, and it's not $500,000 to waste management, it's more like $440,000. And the street lighting, and the deficit in the police and fire fund from that levy, and unpaid bills and other things, it adds up. So we still have to deal with that. We're trying to deal with this year right now. So at some point, we get this close to being under control. And here, even the little things, you know, like I said, we're not paint striping this year. We're only going to do crosswalks around the schools and stop bars and in major intersections. We're not going to do the side streets and the secondaries. You know, Rockside Road was just paved last year. It still looks pretty good. Northfield, you know, Libby we're not going to bother with because ODOT's going to resurface it next year anyway. So that's going to be a savings. Just like, you know, here's a little thing. The sprinkler system at City Hall is broken all over the place from the winter. And even from some of the city's plows hitting it in the parking lot. We're not going to fix it. Why? Because we don't have the money. We can't afford it. So we're not going to have water spraying on the city front lawn this year. You know, water service to the buildings. As far as like cooler water, we're going to get rid of it. It's a small expense, but we can't afford it. Just every little thing, no matter how big, how small, how middle of whatever, is gone. Gone. Because you have to put a priority on the safety, health, and welfare of the citizens, police, fire, on the roads that we drive on, the sidewalks we walk on, the public right of way. Those are the things that we have to do. If we don't have, and we're not going to have, say, the Halloween, the pumpkin hunt, you know, that's not a public safety issue. If we don't have, you know, Santa on a fire truck, that's not a public safety issue. That's not a health and welfare issue. You know, my concerns are the people that call 911, or the kids that are crossing at Libby and Warrensville Center, where we have to have 3 crossing guards because the traffic is so heavy and so crazy up there. You know, but on the other hand, where you have a crossing guard right in front of the school on their property, that's going to be looked at. Those are the things we're looking at. And anyone who has asked, and a lot of people have asked, the schools, will they pick that up? No, because they're in worse shape or bad shape as we are. And they're getting ready for a big gang of layoffs, and they've already started that. And who knows when they're coming with a levy. I have a feeling pretty soon.
Go ahead, Tony.
Through the council president to the mayor, I think we have to come up, or try to come up with ways to generate money. And I think that the departments that are best at doing that is the building department, possibly the police department. I'm not opposed, nor was I ever opposed to traffic cameras, contrary to whatever there is in the newspaper, if they're legal or not. But basically, if you get a ticket, you deserve it because you just ran over the speed limit. And we all know intersections and even our own side streets where they don't even stop at the stop signs. I mean, if that's a way to penalize people and to make our city safer, I'm all for that. I wish there was a way that we could strengthen the building department in order to pick up some of those point of sales or rental registrations, because that's income generating. And when we lay off staff that actually generates income, that's not good for us. I wish there was a way that we could actually impose some type of a fee for false alarms, not making people afraid to call police and fire, but for all the little stupid kind of things, like you're really gonna call a police car to come to your house because you left your car door unlocked and oh my God, they stole your cell phone. They should actually go to the station to make a report on that. You're gonna call one of our guys off the street to do something like that. To me, that just doesn't even make common sense. I don't know if there's ways to not penalize people, but to see if there's different ways we could generate some type of funds or income. And even, I don't know if council could contribute toward any type of time in doing any of this. And I'm not talking for all of council, I'm kind of talking pretty much just my own. I did do some research. Parma just increased their vacant housing registration to $200, and I just talked to council clerk. I was mad, so I made it $5, but I thought $200 is a little bit more reasonable. And I have no problem if council passes that before I send out letters to try to generate some income that way. I know in the past we did sustain a staff person at one time. I think we have enough homes out there to generate some cash on that. I'm wondering through the fire chief doing the collection of the ambulance fees through the Attorney General, can we also include, and I doubt it, RITA, but more so maybe the nuisance calls that we put on the property tax of some of these vacant homes? We can't put in property tax because that's a county-driven issue. But the nuisance things that we put on, like the grass cuts or the police calls or anything else, because I just know that some of the vacant homes and even some of the occupied homes, for as many times as the police have gone out there to actually bill their time, and I know they probably don't even have the time to put on that nuisance, right? But that would help maybe generate as well as straighten them out a little bit, so maybe we don't need to use them that much. So if you want to respond.
Sure. We've signed up for 3 programs right now. One is EMS billing, parking tickets,
Okay,
and any court fees and fines.
okay.
That's the 3 that we signed up for. Now, we can always add more to it. I did ask about rental registration and that type of fine, but they said that they will not go after people out of state. So what about people that live locally? And they kind of hemmed and hawed and kind of left it open. So I'm going to revisit with it once we just got the agreement back signed. Their IT partner will be talking with us to set up so we can transfer the debts to them for collection. That's something we can look at. They maybe they'll do something about rentals if they're local.
Right, I like support fees. There was something on, God, I don't even watch YouTube, but, and I don't like Fitzgerald, but he was giving a state of the county address, and they were saying how they generated over $1 million by using the Attorney General's office and some collection agencies in order to collect some of their court funds.
And we did the same thing. We signed up. We went with the third party after.
Right.
The only cost when we start using a special counsel would be the filing fees, but they said they would not file on anything that you're not going to see a profit on. So if it's $300 and the court costs $200, they're not going to do that. They're looking at worthwhile.
And to the mayor, is there anything that we could do to maybe help strengthen somehow the building department? I know that we're probably still in debt to MBIS, but is there any way that they could, I know they can't hire staff without us backing the staff, but what could we do to either change the ordinance around to either strengthen and add more fees to the point of sale inspection and maybe not as much to the rental registration, because you'd be hitting the guys twice and they're going out to the same home twice? Or seeing if we could do both of those at the same time, like collect a registration fee upon them doing the point of sale inspection or them getting their occupancy permit because you got them right there at the window, I mean, is there any ways that we could combine fees in a lump sum, especially if you know that that's the landlord that's going to be renting the property?
Well, here's the dilemma we face, that whether or not we want to admit this, we've turned into a rental community.
No, we know that.
Yeah. But some people don't want to accept that or believe it. And when you turn into a rental community, you have a serious drop in income taxes, because when CMHA puts their Section 8 tenants in these houses, they don't work. So they're not generating city income tax. You're getting nothing. And the slumlords who are buying these houses under these tricky names like Unicorn Corporation and Second Chances, and you know, there's one today that I turned in, sent the police and the building department to the house at the same time, because they pulled in and started, you know, ripping out carpeting and filling a dumpster in the driveway and left it there, and parked on the wrong side of the street, and no inspections, no permits, no nothing. I mean, that's happening all the time, and it's getting worse because there's more vacants, and they're being gobbled up a lot cheaper. And you know the name of the game, the county wipes out whatever's old when they flip it, and then we get nothing. So I've said this, you know, if you want to make it where the city can get ahead, you take that 200 and maybe double it or put it to 500, because we are losing money every day because we don't charge enough. Because we're not getting any return on this. We may see somebody in the house, and they may not be the most ideal tenant. I can tell you that. We all know that, because the grass isn't getting cut, and you know, the house is starting to look bad, shutters falling down, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. And what are we getting out of it?
Well, that's due to the landlord not properly screening the tenant, but I'm not interrupting you, but what would happen if we came up with some type of a program on council as an incentive to everybody out there that, depending on how many people you catch, like you be our police eyes for people that are moving into these houses or repairing without a permit, and in turn possibly get some type of a gift card, get some type of incentive for turning in these people. I mean, you know, people should do it on their own, but I wouldn't be opposed to putting out some money there to the top whistleblower, if that's the way it's going to go.
Well,
It's
I
just
think
an idea. I mean, I'm looking for an incentive for people to get involved. I mean, I'm preaching to like walls here, you know, people trying to help out their neighbors, or trying to help the city, or trying to do any kind of volunteer work, and I don't get a rise out of anybody. So it's not the Tony Coney show. It's just I need help.
Tony, can I?
Sure.
Yeah. Just from my own observations, you will always have the people who will be I'll be happy to help. There are always that element in this city who say, yes, I would do whatever you need. And then there are those folks who, like a lot of Linda's programs or any of the rec programs, those are all the special events. Those are funded by donors. There's so much money that is poured into all of the Santa delivery, the Easter Fest. All of that is done by people who have contributed. And then there are those people who sit back and say, what, me? I get the calls, this house is falling down, or this is wrong and that's wrong. Mayor gets calls, we all get these calls. Well, have you gone over to your neighbor and said, hey, you know, I'd like to see your house looking just a little bit better? No, I don't want to do that. You know, somebody else needs to do it. You know what, we need to go back to that responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility, and I think you just said you're talking to the walls, because the people who are here are going to be some of the people who will rise to the occasion. How do you find the people out there that we really need to the plate? Really, great ideas, though. If we could just get up and do, and this is going to be my last comment. I think we spent some time on this. We have the Lions Club, the mayor mentioned just a little bit as well. And it's a small club, it's not huge, but it's growing. And at one point, someone sat around a meeting and said, oh, what could we do for Maple Heights? What does Maple Heights need the most? And someone said, jobs. Oh, well, let's have a job fair. And you know what? That's exactly what happened this past week. We had a job fair. Oh, there were over 150 participants who walked through, and this was even before lunchtime. It was just sitting around talking, and someone who got up and said, oh, we can do this. And they did, which is exactly what we need. I think if we have no further questions for the mayor, okay, go ahead.
Councilman Bromley put out a page discussing wages. I think you read it. Any comment?
Well,
You thinking about reducing?
Councilman, remember that, there's very few non-union people left. And those are the ones who are going to take, starting in a couple of weeks, that 30% increase in the hospitalization. 30%. Now, that's the same 30% that we're going to float to the unions and see if, how receptive they are. And I can tell you, since we put that out there, man, they're in full stall. They're doing everything they can to continue to get the current health insurance because they don't have to pay very much money for it. In fact, one of the non-union workers who just gave me his notice yesterday said, on PRS and retirement, the most I would have to pay would be $36 for health insurance. And if I got to stay here and pay an increase of 30%, I'm gone, see ya. So you can see what's happening. We're losing the employees because the health insurance, the non-union, the health insurance is going to go up so high, which is what a lot of us are used to paying in the private, the sector anyway. I mean, if you work at a private factory or, whoever your employer is out in the general public, you're going to pay a lot. So that to us, that's what, Mr. Brownlee calls the new norm. So the new norm is here. That's what it's all about. We only have so much money coming in, and we have to figure out how we spend that without going beyond our means. And that's why this gets so painful, because all of these things that we're looking at, and we're going to be, some of them which have already been cut, and some more which will be cut, are so painful because we don't have the money to fund them. And the only way you get the money to fund them is by raising revenue somehow, by raising fees, or like, we're looking at the traffic cameras. Because we know our police officers are going to go down, so they're not going to be out there running radar, so the cameras could do that in their place and still generate revenue. But on the other hand, when this becomes so agonizing and so painful, remember, we're within a 120-day plan. We have to make this and present this, how we're going to show the state that we close this gap without passing any kind of levies for new money. Because, if we come up short, then they're going to tell us where that's going to come from. There's been others ideas. I know Councilman Separati is planning on having a committee meeting soon about reducing the size of city council from 8 to 5. That could save about $45,000 a year. The population has shrunk. Do we really need all this government? No. When the city had 30,000 plus people, yeah. But now that it's gone way down, you have to look at that too. That's why Councilman Jackson's idea of everything needs to be looked at. So everything does get looked at. That doesn't mean we're going to do it, but we owe it to ourselves and everyone else in this room to look at it. And that's what we're going to do. And salaries, cutting salaries, we don't have anybody left to cut, to be real honest with you. I mean, right now, we have one person in the finance department, a director. The other two gave their notice. I mean, that's what it comes down to. You know, one department's one person in an office. That's what it's come down to.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
To the mayor, are there any other suburbs that are considering suing RITA?
You know, from what I've talked to some other mayors that have been for it, but I'll be real blunt with you. You know, the law directors and the prosecutors get involved, and then they start hesitating, and you know, because they don't. Oh, you're sure you want to litigate this and you want to go through this, and you know, RITA is really very, very fearful of the threat of a lawsuit from us. I mean, RITA is no walk in the park by any means, and they know that. You know, it would be one thing, like I said in the past at meetings, and was, you know, criticized for it, but, and I'm going to say it again, with RITA, with all this outstanding tax money, why don't you even try to get it? Why don't you even try? It was like the lost state cuts, or the money that was cut from the state. Why didn't our state rep and state senator introduce a bill in the Ohio Senate or the Ohio House to reinstitute the local government fund, or even a portion of it, or the cat tax, or the estate tax? Why didn't they do that? One time, introduce the bill and see if you got enough support to pass it. I mean, anyone can do nothing. Anyone can do nothing. But to stand up and do your job and help the people who support you and back you and vote for you, that's not a real big request. If you lose, you lose. You never know how it's gonna play out until you try. And it's the same thing with the county, with the amount of money that's not collected in property taxes. You know, the superintendent of the Maple Schools asked me, how do we collect that? You know, we're down almost 18% in property taxes. How do we collect that? I said, well, first thing you need to do is put on your body armor and your hip boots, because they're going to bombard you with you know what. On all the reasons they can't do it, and then they're going to tell you about all the things that they're going to do for you, which they never do. So, are lawsuits, you know, the answer? You know, maybe, perhaps, if enough cities, you know, can't make it on their own, that they have no choice.
Maybe instead of the city suing, John, what about like a class action suit? It's like the citizens suit? Is that any different?
It's up to our, you know, if he says the state, if some state reps can organize enough people to get involved, and maybe some of these big firms that are millionaires, you know, like the, you know, they get the help on from, you know, to do it pro bono. Pro bono. But nobody's doing it. Well, a lot of times RITA does, you know, we've got a lot of judgments out there and liens on a lot of the properties, but we can't collect them because we're second in line. You know, the mortgage gets paid first. Then you have the judgments that we have for our income taxes, which, you know, the minimum bid, as you know, for a foreclosure is what, 2/3 of
Talking about income taxes, not property.
well, I know, but if you RITA sues them, you know, they have tried to collect some of this money, and they get these judgments. And once you collect, it doesn't even have to be any judgment. It doesn't mean you're going to get the money. If I sue her and I get a judgment against her, and she doesn't have any money for me to collect from, all I can do is put a lien on her house. You know, but if she's got a mortgage on her house and she goes into foreclosure, I mean, the bank's going to get the house back, and our lien is going to be, we're not going to, it's not going to sell for.
Unless it's filed as a nuisance lien, and it wouldn't qualify under nuisance, because that supersedes the mortgage.
Right. So I mean, we have a lot of judgments out there that are uncollectible. I mean, people aren't working, they're hiding, they're filing bankruptcy, you know, it's just a nightmare.
Well, we thank you for coming. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hey, Mary, the letter that Nina Turner sent out
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago, or a couple, you received it, right?
Right, and the council president responded to
Yes,
it.
I did.
Okay.
Did you
never
get a
told us.
response?
What did you
No.
say?
No. See, there you go.
Okay.
I thanked her for her kind support
Okay.
and suggested that she offer assistance.
And
No,
so, okay. Did you call her again?
No, I have not called her again.
Well, that's what you should do. You have to hold
Thank
them
you.
accountable.
Okay. Thank you.
What about, Barnes, John Barnes, have you talked to him?
Barnes was here the night we had the community forum, and he told us and told me that he was going to be contacting me to set up a meeting with all of us. And that never happened, but that's vintage John Barnes, if you know John Barnes. Like,
Okay, wait a minute, Mayor.
I'm just saying that's
we're not
vintage
gonna
John
do that.
Barnes. No, I'm just,
No,
for
I'm just
my
saying,
experience.
okay, yeah, but we are going to set up a meeting with John Barnes and
Okay.
the attorney.
Well, that would be good, because if they show up, if you set it up and they actually respond to you, that would be good.
How about Mrs. Fudge too, why not?
Okay, thank you all for coming,
I have a
and
question.
we absolutely, there's no further business to come before this council.
Madam Chair?
So we will adjourn at 7:30. Thank you all for coming.
It's past 7. Oh, no, it's